So I've composed videos on maybe most of the James Bond films here, and all the ones I deem interesting. That doesn't necessarily include this one. Let me explain. This is kind of a composite catch-all video to address a few things here. Okay, so the thing is this. The Casino Royale 2006 does stand as one of the best films in this entire series, I think, and it promised a bright new future for the 21st century, the James Bond series, which I don't really care much for the Pierce Brosnan films personally. License to Kill is cool, of course, but that's not the direction the series chose to go in. It's probably better off that was just a one-off affair. Living Daylights, the previous Dalton film, is not... I find it kind of bland, to be honest. Not one of my favourites. And then you had Quantum of Solace to follow up Casino Royale with, and it's just not a very interesting film in my humble opinion. I don't find it nearly as memorable as Casino Royale. I feel like that's a fairly common opinion, though. Skyfall was very forced. It tried so hard to be dramatic and epic, and I just have a problem with the films of Sam Mendes. I felt as though Skyfall ought to have been just more basic and modest and just, well, maybe not modest, but just a great, more like Spectre, I ought to say. Maybe I prefer the cinematography of Spectre. Maybe Roger Deakins went a bit far and indulgent in Skyfall. Hoytamer's cinematography in Spectre I much preferred. And the approach of Spectre was just more straightforward, typical Bond film. He's finding out about the secret organization, spying on them. There's Bautista as a heavy. Like, it's fun, straightforward stuff. There's a cool snow sequence. Blofeld's there. And the only time it gets silly is when they make it that Blofeld's Bond's, like, stepbrother, and that, and then the whole thing at the end where he escapes in London, and then when they seemingly have him in prison, there's a mole in MI6, and then they put the actress from Blue is the Warmest Colour, what's her name? Seydoux? Yeah, Seydoux. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but and it's just a whole bunch of nonsense, and you're like, how do they even do that? And people think I think after the Joker in The Dark Knight, and that was such an acclaimed movie, they figured that you can just have him do all this stuff behind the scenes. But the Joker stuff in The Dark Knight wasn't that incoherent. It made sense that the Gotham Police Department was that corrupt, and so the Joker's people, he had the entire mob on his side, Marconi and all those Russians on his side in The Dark Knight. So it makes sense that they would have the traditional contacts in the moles in the police department who were able to put Rachel Hunt. Anyway, we're not going to... Dark Knight's not as riddled with plot holes as people make it out to be, though there is that weird magic bullet thing, of course. Anyway, I feel as though this was the most satisfying of the Daniel Craig Bond films after they came out after Casino Royale. No Time to Die suffered from the same problems as Skyfall, I feel, and I just Rami Malek annoys me because Mr. Robot just obviously isn't a good show, as really the average person ought to know. And then, I don't know, I'm not watching the Queen biopic. I'm just not. I like Queen. There's some great albums there, but just nah, I'm not watching that. I saw this when it came out. I remember with Skyfall, there was a huge James Bond rejuvenation. And then with this one, it was just kind of the reception was more muted compared to Skyfall. Everyone was just like, oh yeah, let's go see the Bond film. They were excited, but then it just happened, and they're like, oh yeah, James Bond. And then you speak to most people about oh yeah, the James Bond film, yeah, it was kind of cool, and they're just like, oh yeah. And it's just it just seemed so you don't care about the issues, or you're just an escapist weirdo if you enjoy James Bond still. I think No Time to Die, people liked it a bit more because it'd been a while since the last one came out, and it was going to be the last one of Craig, so people were like, hey. But with Spectre, it was just a moody time, the 2015, because this is when all election stuff started, and the first indications of what 2016 would be kind of arrives, and 2015 was just a miserable time for everyone. Well, not really. I had some good times there, but it was just a whole bunch of nonsense. The point I'm trying to make is Spectre is a great model of what the Bond film ought to be in the 21st century if it wants to be a homage to the old stuff whilst retaining cutting edge, top of the line modern production values, and being what a 21st century 2015 mid 2010s at that time modern action film can be, with all the resources and budgets that the Bond film that the Bond series can acquire, and just simply show off, wow, look, think about what the series could do in, say, 1965, 75, 85, 95, 2005, and now look what it can do. It was a great indicator of how far it had come since 2006 Casino Royale, which was a brilliant indicator of what the 2000s could do, and what that era epoch could do with a Bond film's formula in execution. And Spectre was terrific at this as well, and didn't have to go over the top with, M and Javier Bardem and Skyfall. Like, it's just, you don't need that. There's the brother stuff, and, but, like, this one of Christoph Waltz, but I found that more ignorable, I guess. I think I just wanted a really formulaic but 21st century Bond film, and I don't think there had been a proper example of that until Spectre. Die Another Day was just terrible. Casino Royale was adapting a very specific novel with some set plot locations, and then Quantum of Solace wasn't very good, and then Skyfall was too dramatic and indulgent and like post Dark Knight and like introspective and just not that intelligent, and not that the Bond series necessarily needs to be, but like not overly stupid, to be fair. And then Spectre was just fairly, alright, let's just play it safe, just go straight, just do our like big bad Bond film after we do the dramatic kind of critically acclaimed one. Let's just go straight up, make everyone happy with Spectre, but no one was happy. On paper, this is probably what everyone wants from a Bond film, except for like, a few plot holes and the stepbrother thing. I don't know. It was fine. Whatever, I think.